Guys, welcome. I am Tiff Neal. I am a registered nurse here representing my company, The Next Level Nurses. This is my first live stream ever, so I'm very excited to be here today. Um, I wanted to just have an opportunity to chat with my community to answer some questions about nursing and have some patience with me because this is the first live stream on this channel. Okay. We're going to be working through some technical difficulties, hopefully not too many, and get going. So if anyone is here live in the chat, please tell me where you're joining me from. City and state or state and country would be very nice. Let me know what the weather is like where you are, and we're going to jump into assisted living. Um, you know, I went from assisted living into nursing. I switched careers in my mid 30s, and it was like a complete topsy-turvy path. But I learned a lot, and I just want to share some of my insights with you. All right, so we have Matthew in here. Yay. Okay, we got some people in the chat. Let me move this chat window a little bit so I can see from Chicago. Thank you. That is great. Well, welcome. I'm live from actually from Pennsylvania right now. So, this is my first video. Come on in, make yourself comfortable. And today's topic is assistant living. The top five mistakes that assistant living newbies make when starting their business or even before they begin in the planning stages. There are some crucial areas where people tend to go wrong, and I want to help you guys avoid that while educating you on what is assistant living, how does it differ from like a nursing home, why it's really kind of the best kept secret in business, and how to make an impact in that field. Um, Throughout the live, feel free to ask me any questions about assisted living, nursing school, NCLEX, all of that. And if you're not able to put it in the chat, then you can always essentially email me your questions. That email is going to be ask at thenextlevelnurses.com. So if you ever have questions that you want featured on a live, that you want featured on the channel, that you might even get a video for, a video response or a short, go ahead and email that to ask at thenextlevelnurses.com. So again, a tiny bit about me. This isn't really about me, it's about you, but a tiny bit about me. I am a registered nurse. I help untraditional students that are entering nursing. I help them with mentorship. I help them with study guides, making the plan to get into nursing after being out of school for a while. And I also help nurses and other professionals enter the world of assisted living. So keep in mind, you might think, oh, I'm not a nurse, I can't do that. That's not true. I owned and operated two assisted living facilities before I even went back to school to become a nurse. So you do not have to be a nurse, but it is very well suited for people with healthcare experience and healthcare background. So again, you do not have to be a nurse to utilize what I'm sharing today. So, if you are interested in assisted living facilities, if you know someone who is, or even if you've just been having that burning desire in the back of your head to, you know, that you can really do it, I'm here to tell you that you absolutely can. Okay? That's what I'm going to tell you. You absolutely can, and you should try. So, it is going to take some strategy. I'll tell you that. So, again, if you're feeling burnt out, if you're feeling sick and tired of waking up every day and feeling like what you do doesn't matter, or just feeling kind of unable to use your gifts and talents, then stick around and we'll talk about assisted living today. So, give me 1 second. I'm going to pull up my window. I'm going to leave the screen for a brief second and come back up with my presentation. All right, wow. That worked so much better than I thought it was. So again, this is your little intro to assisted living facilities. And the first thing we're going to do is talk about what's the the difference between assisted living and nursing homes? This is probably the most common question that I get often. Assisted living and nursing homes get mixed up all the time because they're very similar, but they do have some key differences. So somebody in the chat is saying, I thought ALF, like assisted living facilities and nursing homes, were the same. They actually are not. Assisted living facilities are going to be typically smaller, family owned businesses. They can be based out of a single family home, a townhome, and in some venues, even a very well suited apartment or condo. Assisted living facilities are designed to help people who are disabled with their activities of daily living. They are called ADLs. So that would be like bathing, in some cases, toileting, um, going to the doctor, mobility, meals, and passing medications. Those are some examples of things that people may need assistance with. The owner and the manager can be the same person or can be separate entities. I was an owner operator, which means I was an owner manager, but also you can hire a manager as well to manage that. But the owner and the manager will essentially work together in assisted living facilities and figure out what type of care they can provide and figure out what type of clients they want to assist. And in assisted living facilities, one of the biggest difference between this and a nursing home is that the population that you serve or the types of people that come in, who we call residents or clients, they don't have to be elderly. They don't have to be elderly. So assisted living facilities can serve any population of adults, sometimes children. It can be for a range of disabilities or differences that that population is facing. So, with a nursing home, however, these are typically corporate owned. They are larger facilities based out of commercial buildings. These are going to be more institutionalized settings that have dozens to hundreds, even of seniors. In nursing homes, it is specifically catered to seniors. These facilities, I hate to say it, they are associated with some poor outcomes in certain cases. They usually have a poor staff to resident ratio because they are so big. So, due to their size, they can have a worse staff to resident ratio. And a plus of nursing homes is that they tend to have more boutique services because they are larger, because you do have corporate funding. If you were to start that type of venture, they can have, like, um, a restaurant inside the nursing home, or they can have other boutique services like a hairdresser, pedicurist, things like that. So these facilities, the nursing homes, tend to have skilled medical care 24/7, and they have a higher level of care to be able to care for medically complex residents. Assisted living facilities are required to have staff 24/7, but not necessarily skilled medical care. So it could be like a caregiver, an unlicensed skilled personnel, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a LVN, a LPN, or RN, things of that nature, or even necessarily a CNA, which is a certified nursing assistant. Now, LVN and LPN are the same. Those are licensed vocational nurses, or otherwise known as licensed practical nurses. Those may also be called diploma nurses. Registered nurses um, can be registered nurses with they've passed their NCLEX, or they can be BS and RNs like myself who got a bachelor's and also passed their NCLEX. So now that we know that, let's talk about some of the benefits of assisted living facilities. One of the benefits that jumps out at me, and I did talk about this in depth in a prior video called Truth versus Lies, Assisted Living Facility. Um, there are other benefits, obviously, that lay a path for financial freedom. But the thing with assisted living facilities is it's one of the only businesses that can generate a really high level of profit with lower startup costs. So something like a food service franchise, if you're looking at McDonald's, for example, you have to have a liquid cash requirement of 500,000 sitting in the bank available before you are even able to submit that franchise application to build a McDonald's in your neighborhood or to take over an existing McDonald's. Even something smaller like a 7-Eleven or convenience store, if there's a franchise option, there's like a franchise fee of 40K. Plus, you have like land and building permits, renovations, improvements. So these figures can be a little defeating for the average everyday person or the average nurse to go ahead and start this venture. And that is not even counting the type of healthcare businesses that you can franchise. And I do want to show you guys that. So I'm going to come off of this screen capture for just a second and be able to pull up some actual franchises. And this is a real link from entrepreneur.com. Let me pull this up, copy link, and I'm going to actually exit this so that I can show you guys because it is pretty daunting, honestly. When I saw this, I was very surprised. All right, let's pull this up, window capture. And thank y'all for being patient with me because I am not that technologically advanced, but I'm just so excited to share this with you. So here we have a fitness venue here. And let me move this. We have Pure Fitness, health and wellness franchise. We're starting at 399,000. We have Boost Home Healthcare and Wellness. This is a little bit less expensive, but we're starting at 155,000 just to be able to franchise this. We have Home Helpers starting at 113,000 just to franchise. Crunch Fitness, which is popular. This is probably the first popular brand that we've heard here. They're starting at almost a million. They're starting shy of a million, 918,000 to franchise this. Pearl Vision, hey, this is 70K, right? But you have to also keep in mind, do you have the staff for this? You're likely not an optometrist. Do you have the staff for this? Because your staffing is going to be much higher expense when you're hiring professionals of this caliber that have this education level and these certifications versus caregivers to staff your assisted living facility. So I think that you guys get the point here. So I'm going to go back to the presentation now that we've talked about the benefits. Wait, I'm learning on the fly. Okay. So we talked about that, you're going to need staff immediately when you do that type of franchise, and the staffing expenses are going to be higher. The land and use permits are going to be higher. It's not the same way for ALF. You can use a single family home that you own yourself. You can rent a single family home or a townhome or a condo as well equipped. That changes the game. And another thing is your facility is based on your passion. The group that you really care about the most, that can be who lives in your assisted living facility. So for some people, it's veterans. For some people, it's adults on the autism spectrum. For some people, it's psychiatric patients who may not even have physical disabilities, but they have mental health needs. This is one of the few businesses that you get to choose who you serve and you get to serve who you love. So that is one thing that I really liked about it. But with every benefit, guys, there are going to be challenges too. And I will never tell y'all one side of the story without telling you the other because that's just not who I am. Challenges, this is going to be mistake number one is sloppy applications. Licensing your application and your inspection is going to be very difficult. I'm going to just be 100% honest with you. You have to stay up to date on all of these regulations even after you pass inspection. So I'm going to give you guys an example of of the fire code in the state of Maryland. I'm going to give you an example of the fire code in the state of Maryland, just so that you guys can see this, okay? Because I'm not going to lie to you, it's intense. And It's incredible. So this is the fire code for the state of Maryland. This document is 60 pages. I know that because I've had to read this and almost treat this as my Bible for many years. All of these fire prevention code things, you're going to have to outfit or set up your facility to adapt to these requirements. So when they talk about emergency plan locations, that means you have to write out an emergency plan, both an evacuation emergency plan and a shelter in place emergency plan, and they have to be posted in your facility. When they talk about your board and care occupancy, that's the limit of how many residents you can have for a licensed facility. When they talk about the equipment, maintenance and testing, they're talking about, do you need to have battery operated or electrical hardwired fire alarms or smoke alarms in your house? And where do they have to be? And how do they have to be set up? Do they need to connect to the fire station? Or can they just be standalone? These are all things that you need to know. And there's 60 pages of very detailed code in here. So one of the mistakes that people make is honestly not taking that seriously enough and making preparation for inspection for these regulations to be put in place. And there are all types of regulations that are going to come. When you're talking about assisted living, there are health regulations, there's fire regulations, there's city and state regulations, and the list goes on. So your application has to be impeccable. Your inspection got to be perfect. The licensing is hard, but it's worth it. So I'll give you another example of some of the licensing here. This was for my licensing of my assisted living facility. This is from the state of Maryland. A lot of laws that they pull are going to be from national federal regulations and guidelines. But you can see, we're starting off with step number one is a hand-drawn sketch of your physical site using separate sheets of paper, and you need to label each room. You have to include the measurements for every single room, and you have to do this by what's called Colmar law in the state of Maryland. You have to have a uniform disclosure statement. You have to have a menu cycle that's been reviewed by a licensed dietitian or a licensed nutritionist. You have to have your approved fire inspection before you even submit your application to the state, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These things take time to get through and they take time to understand genuinely. So by the time you get, let's say you have done the application perfectly, amazing. You get a round of applause. Then you have your inspection, and this is mistake number two. People do not prepare for inspection. This is a list of paperwork that they check during your inspection. So you've submitted a bunch of paperwork. They come to inspect you, and then surprise, you got more paperwork. You have more paperwork that they're going to check for you. So this is your staff record that you have to have here with evidence that you've taken everything, with evidence of all your vaccinations. You have to have an alternate manager in case something happens to you. You have to show your criminal background check, your criminal history records. You got to have a contract with a delegating nurse, your quality assurance plan, your business plan for 1 year that shows your financial competency. You've got to have it all. And then they inspect the location, right? Then they inspect the location. So I do want to say these regulations are difficult, but they're not impossible. And these laws are crucial. They're tedious because this is people's lives at stake here. These are laws and rules and regulations that your city's put in place, your state has put in place, the federal government has put in place. And this is to protect people's lives, to protect their health and safety. So, an example, something that people often overlook because it seems minor, but it's not. You need to have thermometers in your freezers, in your refrigerators, and by your sinks at all times. There are rules and laws on what temperature all of these things have to be. It seems extra, but it's really important for food safety because we know it's very easy to get bacterial contaminants that cause foodborne illness, otherwise known as food poisoning. And while somebody that is younger and healthy, food poisoning may just be a really bad night, for someone that is immunocompromised, like an elderly person or like someone who's going through chemo and radiation for cancer, that can really take them out. It can cause serious illness requiring hospitalization, and it can cause death depending on what the bacteria or infectious agent is. The same with the water temperature. If we don't have it at an appropriate temperature, we might turn it on and snatch our hands back and say, ouch, that's hot, and adjust. But if you have an older adult that has some decreased sensation, especially with diseases like diabetes, or any type of neuropathic diseases, they may not have that reflex just as quickly because they have diminished sensation, diminished pain perception. So they don't snatch their hand back and they get a nasty burn, and then that burn can get infected, and you see how this can cause issues. So something so minor like, you got to have thermometers here and you have to do a log of the temperatures and you have to keep that log on site. It seems just tedious for the sake of being tedious, but it is important for health and safety. Okay. So even though these laws are complex, it's not impossible to learn them. Just like anything else, with practice, with repetition, with constant exposure, you will learn and grow. There are people who are in this industry who know all of these laws like the back of their hand. They can walk through a property in the same way that people who do like home inspections, they do assessments on like new builds. They walk in and they know exactly what they're looking for. They know what's going to pass building inspection and what's going to fail and why. And it's the same with this. So I know if I'm walking through a property of somebody who's ready to get licensed and ready for their inspection, I can spot, hey, is that extinguisher actually 3 feet from the ground? And is it close enough to a fire prone area? Or I can spot a really poorly written, vague resident agreement that has holes in it that's going to get flagged during your application review. I can see, like, hey, you got a grab bar, or maybe you're missing a grab bar in the shower, or you have one, but it's one with like a suction cup instead of a metal one that you can install. And you best believe I'm gonna be hopping in that shower, shaking on that grab bar to see, if someone were to slip, an elderly person, are they gonna fall and bust their tail or bust their head, get a concussion? Number one, I'm testing because I don't want you to tell me, oh, well, Tiff did a walkthrough with me and she said everything looked great. And I passed inspection, and then Mr. Smith, went to grab this and it came off the wall and he fell and has a head bleed now. Absolutely not. We want to keep Mr. Smith safe, protect Mr. Smith at all costs, right? But also, the surveyor, which is the person who does the inspection that comes out to your house, typically it is a nurse or healthcare professional. You best believe during your inspection, they're going to go in there and grab it with the force of 10 men. And if it comes off, then you fail. Then you failed that survey. So, even once you pass the application process and you get into your licensed, you're in the promised land, so to speak, you still have to be vigilant, not only with the physical site, but with the paperwork and the documentation for each resident. There are documents that's required for every admission. And I can look at a resident's file and say, hey, there is a pulse missing, which is your physician orders for life sustaining treatment. Basically, that's a long way of saying, what does this person want if their life is in danger? What level of intervention or medical activity are they willing to have done on them? Do they want to be on life support? Do they not want to be on life support? Do they want to be resuscitated? Not resuscitated. Every state has a different version, but that's a basic overview. So now that we got through, hey, we're getting through all of this. What's the point of this? is to show our love for the community, is to create something good in the world, but it's business. So we do want to make money. So let's talk about the income factors. Your income factors. Everyone says, how much money can I make in assisted living? How much money can I make in assisted living? Well, that's going to depend on a few different factors. Some of those factors are going to be your level of care. So we have mistake number 3 was not having enough support. And that goes in hand with mistake number 4, setting an inappropriate level of care. That's very common. Your level of care is going to be determined by your state or local guidelines, but I'll give you an overview. In Texas, there are 2 levels of care. There are 2 facility types, facility A and facility B. That's going to be your determinant of level of care. Facility A has patients or residents or clients that can evacuate by their own independent means if an emergency happens, and they do not need overnight medical care or attention. A facility type 2 or type B in Texas is going to be somebody who needs overnight care and somebody who's going to need help to evacuate in an emergency, right? In Maryland, there are 3 levels of care. And instead of letters, we have numbers. We have 1, 2, and 3, with 3 being the most complex. So every state is going to tell you how to grade that level of care, but your skill level and your staff's skill level is going to determine what level of care you can accommodate. And that level of care that you can accommodate will affect your bottom line. So I have an example here of 2 facilities. And I have, oh, here's your level of care. It says if a person is mentally sharp, only takes medication for light pain, needs assistance with bathing, they might be like a lower level of care than somebody who's mentally confused. Any type of cognitive distortions, any type of dementia, Alzheimer's, that's automatically going to be a higher level of care for most people, because if they can get disoriented, they're going to require a higher level of care than somebody who is alert and oriented, and has all of their faculties, right? So, income factors, we have 2 facilities here, 2 locations. One is urban, one is suburban. We got different level of clients as far as the number of your residents that's in there, different payment types, and different price that the average resident in that area for that level of care is going to pay. So we had the suburban home, we got the urban home, we got the town home, we got the single family home. Most people would say, oh, I would want the suburban home. It's single family. But this one is licensed for less beds, right? So even though the average resident pays more per month, pays 4,500 per month versus 3,300, is licensed to take less clients. And so for that facility, and these are real facilities also in the state of Maryland, by the way, that facility is going to bring you a total income that's not, income is in revenue, not full profit, of 18,000 per month. Whereas the urban townhome, because it has more beds, which is more licensed clients you can take in, even though they pay less, you're getting more per month for that facility at 23,100. So I just wanted to highlight that. Another income factor, you got to think about your costs. You have to think about your costs, right? Mistake number 5 is not counting your costs, especially the time that it's going to take you to get licensed, in your budget, in your trajectory. So, what type of costs can you be looking for in assisted living? Renovation costs, that's going to be huge. Renovation costs are going to be huge. You can have, well, let me take that back. Let me walk that back a little bit. Renovation costs, it depends on, have you got the property that you need to have in the first place? And this is why you do walkthroughs if you're thinking of purchasing a home for this purpose, or if you're thinking of renting out a home, you want to do a walkthrough with a consultant, somebody who owns a facility who's done this before. Because for my facilities and the facilities that I've helped people open, very light renovations, mostly regarding like hard wiring, security systems, fire systems, fire extinguishers up, grab bars, things like that. So those are examples of light to moderate. Your shower rails, maybe you need a lit exit sign for fire escape purposes, and that has to be hardwired instead of battery operated. So you do have to get an electrician to do that. Same for like the hardwired smoke alarms. You got to get an electrician to do that. Heavy and more unexpected would be like installing a chair lift or a stair lift where someone goes from one floor to another because they are wheelchair bound. That would not be expected for most assisted living facilities unless you are taking wheelchair type clients. And again, assisted living, you're taking the clients that you can care for and that you want to care for in ideal circumstances. So there are many facilities, the majority of the facilities that I've helped people open, there are clients that are referred to in industry as walkie talkies. They can ambulate, they can walk on their own, they can speak to you and tell you what they need, how they're feeling. But there are facilities that do have wheelchair clients, that do have bed-bound clients, and you will have different renovations to assist you and your staff to provide them the best care that they need if you take on those clients. Inspections also cost money. Every time somebody comes out to look at something, every time there's a piece of paper they have to review, you're going to be spending money, like $200 to $500 a piece for application, inspection, fire inspection, city zoning inspection, etc. And staff is going to be your biggest expense because you want to have good staff. You want to have people that you would feel like your grandmother or your mother was safe with. That's really, really important. Your father, your brother, your sister, your cousin, your auntie, your uncle. You want to make sure you have staff that are well trained, right? And you want to pay them well and you want to keep them well trained. So that is an expense. So I'm just, hey, people can make up anything online. I just wanted to show my actual licenses for my two facilities, when I got them licensed, so that you can see I've been doing this since 2019. I do not still operate assisted living facilities. I do not still own and operate them. I stopped that last year. I went to nursing school. I switched industries. But the point is, these licenses are not Tiffany is so amazing and she did all of this on her own. This is a testament to the fact that I had support. I had people consulting me. I had people who had done this for 10 years helping me through this process and helping me do it so I didn't feel like I had to be alone. So, to wrap up this live, I want you to know, somebody said in the comment that looks impossible to figure out. Like, it did look hard, but it is possible, and people know it in the same way that whatever specs you had to learn for your job or your trade. You know them because of repetition and practice, and because you're brilliant, and because you care about it and you do it every day. So people know and they want to guide you through, and we know and we want to guide you through. We can help you and we want to help you understand these complex zoning laws, these state regulations, all of these requirements. We want to create your training materials that's catered to your facility, helping the owners, helping the managers, and helping the staff too. And I do guides, coaching, and workshops. I used to do like more of the one-on-one stuff, but now I like to, my life is busy. I'll just be honest. It's happily, joyfully busy, but I like to do workshops if I can and get a few in a group, and help that way. But even if you don't need my services, which you can find on the website, thenextlevelnurses.com, under ALF, Assisted Living Facility, Assisted Living 123, there's still things that can help you. So I wanted to give resources to everyone who's starting at every level. We went over the mistakes, but this would be advantageous to you. This will put you at a huge advantage. This will help you if you decide to go into assisted living. You want to reach out to your health department, your Department of Aging, your Department of Social Services, your fire department, to understand these laws and statutes. Now, they're not required to help you. Someone says in the chat, so you do consulting. Yes, I do consulting. We can set up whatever you need, but I do like an intro to assistant living. I go through applications with you. I do video walkthroughs, talk to you about your zoning laws, etc. And if I'm not able to assist you, I'll say, hey, I don't know too much about this particular area or this niche, but I'm going to try to hand you off to someone who does. But yes, I do consulting. I'll go through these steps with you and create a step by step guide for you and meet with you on a regular basis to see where you are in your process and to continue to encouraging you and giving you the information so that you can move forward. But if you're not at that point yet, we understand. I'm not going to just leave you in the lurch. I'm all about giving resources here. This is what I do. So you want to, again, reach out to these agencies. Now, they're not required to give you the answers in the way that I would give you the answers, but you can ask them, what does this mean? I'm filling out this application. What do you mean use and occupancy? And why do I have to get a waiver for this? Use and occupancy is a law that many places have about how many unrelated adults and children can share a dwelling and use it and occupy it together. So if you want a facility that has something more than that arbitrary, state or city locale derived number, then you have to put in an exception and you have to prove, hey, I can accommodate this amount of people in my business because they'll each have this amount of space, this square footage per room, and this square footage per resident in common areas. And that's how you handle that. Now, when you call your zoning office, they may not phrase it that way, but you have to be persistent and keep asking them. And another thing that's going to be a resource for you is to really sit down and think about your business plan, pull together your resources, and make sure that you plan for your startup costs, make sure you plan for those fees, make sure you plan for the time to license. I think my first facility, we started renting the house. The first facility I had was not even a single family home, and I rented the space because I wasn't in a position to buy yet. And that was in 2018. That was summer, early fall 2018. And I started doing light renovations then. And I wasn't licensed until I think this will say April or May. Yeah, April 2019. So you can see on this license here. So it took a while. I had to make sure that that was included in my business plan. What happens when you're licensed and unfortunately, you didn't use me to come up with a strategy to get clients in right away. Your facility, just because you get licensed and you go through that gauntlet that's confusing, it still may actually take a while before you get clients in. So that's something else you have to plan for. You have to plan how to attract clients. There's that phrase, if you build it, they will come. That's not true in assisted living. There are certain ways that you need to court your potential residents and their family, depending on what population you serve. So you have to have that in your business plan. You want to have that as a resource, that you know how to get the clients that you want, the clients that will sustain you, the clients that you can serve. So that would be it pretty much for the 101 of assisted living, the five biggest mistakes that I have people avoid. We're going to go over those mistakes one more time. Sloppy applications, not prepping enough for inspection, not having adequate support through this process because it is a gauntlet, setting an inappropriate level of care for what you and your expertise are and your staff, and not counting your time to get licensed in your budget and in your business plan. So I'm just going to leave the floor open for a few questions, but I hope that this was helpful for you guys. We do absolutely love consulting. I absolutely love seeing people make the decision to unshackle themselves, especially nurses, because I know how hard we work. I know how hard we work. I know it's a thankless job at times. I know that the schooling alone is grueling. And to go out of that into the healthcare industrial machine is sometimes a rough transition. So I'm always happy to see people through that transition into business, and feeling like they finally have the ground under them and they can plan for the future. That's always something that I love to do. Um, okay, I have a question. Can you buy an assisted living facility? So you actually can purchase an assisted living facility that has already been licensed. The license stays with the physical location that has been inspected. It doesn't travel with the owner. So if you get licensed, the license stays with the location. So you can purchase a location. You can also lease a location, and we do, have a small repository of locations in the DMV area that are for lease, and that is also available on our website, thenextlevelnurses.com. So we focus on, Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia. There are houses that are for lease there. If you want to list a house with us there and connect with, you know, people who surf the website, then you can also do that. Contact me for details. But yes, you can buy an assisted living facility. You can lease one that's already been licensed. You would have to most likely turn the licensing over to yourself, which can be a paperwork process, but luckily it doesn't trigger additional inspections or things like that unless there's been huge renovations to the property since it was licensed. So I want to thank y'all for spending time with me tonight. I hope you guys are enjoying this or enjoying the replay if you watched again. And put your questions in the comments below or go ahead and email me at ask@thenextlevelnurses.com. And I will see you next time. Bye, guys. Thanks for making my first live so fun. See you next time.